Okay, hi. My name is Matt Leib, and I'm what's known as a TSE at Connection Enterprise Solutions, based in the Midwest. I'm a blogger and sort of an industry analyst, and I perform an enterprise architectural role. So I'm here today to talk because we're at an HPE conference, HPE Discover, in fact. I'm here to talk about basically the storage portfolio, where the different parts and pieces mix, and what's truly relevant, why you should choose one over the other, or why you should potentially choose HP over other brands. So on this slide, you're going to basically see the family snapshot. And on the family snapshot, you're going to see at the smaller end, the MSA series device, which is essentially a smart JBOD. JBOD, of course, if you don't know, means just a bunch of disk. The idea is for your non-data intensive workloads, for your hybrid mixes, but without the level of management control that you might find in some of the higher level platforms. Next step up, you're going to see the HyperConverged platform called Simplivity, which was an acquisition from about a year and a half ago. Simplivity is one of the major hyperconverged solutions in the industry. HyperConverged is a platform that includes storage, compute, and network all in one pod-like package. So a component can support a given workload of given sizes. And I'll talk more about that in a bit as well. Next step up is another acquisition, fairly recent, called Nimble. Nimble fits in the storage platform in the middle, though it's essentially a smaller environment than 3PAR, which is the next step up, which HPE's owned for many years now. Lots of development on the 3PAR side to talk about. But the Nimble architecture is really quite advanced, and for my money, the rationale for acquiring this excellent product was the software that it comes with as part and parcel to the equation. And then 3PAR, which has a number of different lines all the way up to the big enterprise side. It's hybrid. It could be all flash as well. And while HPE has owned it for many years, the development in that particular product line has been quite substantial within the past few years. And then we've got the XP7. XP7 sort of positions itself against the very large platforms like an HDS enterprise level, 5 nines of both data integrity as well as sizing architectures. They are predictive, cloud-ready, and timeless, and can support your business at really whatever level you need for that particular use case. I'm going to talk a bit about some of the software stack now. What is it that makes Nimble versus other pieces of hardware in the line so attractive? Nimble comes with initially a couple of pieces. One of them is InfoSight, which I will talk about after this solution, and the other one is called Cloud Volumes. Storage is a difficult thing. As we start to incorporate cloud architectures into what we're doing, we start to run into the cost overruns of what it means to both store stuff in the cloud and even more difficult, removing stuff from the cloud. So that data egress from the major cloud providers is a highly costful entity. And the cool thing about Cloud Volumes is that you can have that same amount of data, you can support it within your environment, but in this case, you're actually not putting it in-house at Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud, which is the major cloud providers where those storage costs are untenable. You're actually putting it what we call proximate to the location. And my belief is if you can store your 100 terabyte database as close to the compute source, which may be on your major cloud provider, but not on that cloud provider, then you're not charged the data ingress, data egress, or even data storage that the large cloud providers will charge. There's no egress charge, there's no replication charge. There's just a leased model in cloud volumes where you're basically renting space on an existing data center, which is gated for your data, but you're not actually buying that storage. You want to remove it from there, move it elsewhere, bring that workload back into your environment, you're not charged for it. You are no longer paying that lease price on all that disk. Now, there's another statement here that says it's 3PAR as well. And while Cloud Volumes is not actually a 3PAR product, 3PAR is coming down the road with a newer version of something along these lines called Cloud Bank. And again, it's a approximate location storage environment with all of the software bells and whistles that you would find on a 3PAR, but again, none of the negativity that you'd find by storing that data up in the cloud. I believe it's a very important way in which many of these larger environments would store their data and basically save on the operational costs of putting all that data up in the cloud provider. So Cloud Bank is going to be interesting. This, by the way, InfoSight, which I've mentioned a couple of times already, is magic. InfoSight gives you a predictive analytic against your environments. So what does that mean? Say you've decided you were going to patch your VMware environment up to the 6.5, 6.7 release, but the HBAs you have in your VMware servers aren't at the right firmware level for that version. Well, that's a problem. The only way to know that problem typically ahead of time is have a test environment in place, load it up, and see what doesn't work. Well, that's important, and I'm not advocating that you get rid of your sandbox, but what this does is it says, hey, your QLogic HBAs that are connecting to our Nimble storage, our 3PAR storage, are not compatible at this version level. Before you do your upgrade, patch these. Now, I can foresee many areas where InfoSight's going to start having a footprint. Well, I'm predicting, tea leaves. I think that InfoSight will probably have more and deeper hooks into your virtual environment, whether that happens to be VMware, Hyper-V, Azure, what have you. But I also think that you're going to be able to be provided these kinds of analytics ahead of time. It might say your memory module in server 4, cluster 3 is not being read properly, which is not something that your vCenter is going to tell you. It's more of a base level hardware environment call that feeds this data back up to what the InfoSight infrastructure is, and then tells you what you need to do to fix that. I can imagine back when I ran a VMware environment, it would have been great to know these kinds of things ahead of time before I did patching, before I even tried to load that stuff into my sandbox environment. So part of the extra special componentry of InfoSight is that the data that it's calling from is actually compared against the entire customer base, originally on Nimble and now on 3PAR, as just machine level information, right? This has nothing to do with data. So that machine level information from the competitor space, from your customers, from anybody who happens to have today a VMware environment in place, will feed back that data to you and get you to the point where you know these things ahead of time and you're not faced with the downtime that you might experience. So this is the HyperConverged platform called Simplivity. The nice thing about Simplivity is that you're buying a set level of architecture sized specific for the environment, but there is some magic here too. And that magic revolves around this particular card that we're seeing right here. So the Simplivity OmniCube has a floating point unit card in each node, and that floating point allows for replication, deduplication, compression, metadata tracking, etc., so that all of your environments are cognizant of every other environment, and replication from the same console can take place across the entire ecosystem. Synergy. Now, Synergy is the big dog in the HPE compute, storage, and network line. It is a truly composable architecture. You define your profile based on what that server's intent, production database, dev, email, whatever it is that is your use case. And then when you deploy, it deploys all the storage necessary, all the compute necessary, and the networking necessary to house that particular guest in the VMware environment exactly the way you want it. Really excellent architecture. There's so much more I could go into it, but again, this is an overview. Another thing that I find incredibly compelling is the flex capacity financial model that HPE or HP Accounting Services has put forward. And basically what you do is you buy what you anticipate your architecture to be. That architecture arrives on site with an additional 30% overhead. As you use that additional overhead, you get charged, but you don't get charged for it initially. And again, it's a lease model. If you can predict your utilization, and by the way, this will be storage, Synergy, HCI, whatever you need, but as you use it, you first get more equipment in to support that additional 30% buffer, but you only get charged for those horsepower, proc utilization, memory utilization, storage utilization components that you're using at that time. And so for a financial model, a company that's reluctant to put out the CapEx to support the entire environment, that company can now operationalize this sort of profile model and move that forward. And that's all I have for today. Thank you.